Thank you guys for coming. My name is Olaya. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Dexter. And broadly speaking, we make geniuses. But more precisely, we help K-12 students and adults reach their full potential by preparing them for the digital age. So I thought in this short 6 minutes that I would do a few things. Tell you a story about how I got to this point, how we got here. Talk about what we actually do, where we're headed, and how you guys might be able to help. So let's start with story time, how we got here. My story starts in Wichita Falls, Texas. I grew up here and graduated from Old High, and I wanted to leave Wichita Falls so quickly I actually graduated a year early. So I graduated from Old High and then moved to Dallas, where I studied at University of North Texas. And I studied there for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and then I dropped out and I moved to Austin. And the reason I dropped out is because I started a tech startup. We were developing some software for the healthcare industry. And I joined an incubator called Capital Factory. We raised venture capital. This was me giving a presentation. That gentleman up, if you guys remember AOL, it's Steve Case. It was actually a really bad day because I totally forgot what I was supposed to say. So it was a super interesting experience. I saw this picture and I kind of cringed a little bit. So I ran that startup in Austin for 2.5 years. But I just lacked all practicality. So speaking of the challenges of entrepreneurship, I had the clouds, I had the big vision for what I wanted to build, but we just lacked all practicality. We lacked the dirt. We raised money, we didn't make a single dollar. We had this big dream, but we didn't execute on the day-to-day basis. So that takes a ton of discipline. So this second time around, several years in hindsight, I really emphasized the dirt. You have to have both the clouds and the dirt, that practicality, making money. So then after that startup failed, I was fortunate enough to drop back into college. And so I came back to Midwestern, to Wichita Falls, and I studied at Midwestern. And this past year I graduated with degrees in mechanical engineering and physics. And during my last year, I spent the summer in San Francisco. And I ended up getting a job as an instructor at a summer program at Stanford University. And I taught 3D printing and computer-aided design to these students from the United Arab Emirates. And I was a practitioner of the tool. I had used 3D printing to solve real problems and to build real things. And so the impact on the student was really profound. And I felt like I had a really good impact. And so I came back to Wichita Falls after that summer and said, we got to do more of this. And so this is the very first workshop we did. And speaking about that clouds and dirt, this is kind of the dirt. We had 6 people, but we actually got them to pay us. And it wasn't the best workshop, but it was a workshop, and they paid us. And so we got a little bit of momentum. It's really hard to go from 0 to 1. That's the hardest thing, but then things snowball. So this is our first workshop. And then we did some bigger workshops. We did this in partnership with Midwestern, and we had about 45 people come to this, all the way from ages 8 to 60, which any educator will tell you that's a horrible idea to have such different variability of skill level, but we made it work. And then right after graduation, I went to China for about a month. And I taught 3D printing and computer programming to 25 Chinese students. And if you really want to test your teaching skills, I encourage you to go to a place where they don't speak English. So most of these kids didn't speak English. I had to teach through a translator. So it was this really fascinating experience. But again, the impact was so strong because I'm a practitioner of this knowledge. And so it was immediately relevant to the kids. Because kids they're smart. They always ask themselves, why should I do this? That's the human impulse. And so I started to kind of think, wow, I think we're really onto something. I told one of my mentors about what I've been doing, and he said, Michael, you found your Ikigai. This is a Japanese concept called the reason for being. It's whenever you're at the intersection of what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at. And if you can find your reason for being, then you're kind of like an unstoppable force of nature. And so I had really found my Ikigai, my reason for being. And so I formalized that into Dexter. So let's talk about kind of the 200-foot view of what we actually do and what we're currently doing. We do 2 things. We actually teach courses and we develop our own curriculum. So let's talk about the courses that we teach. That's how we're making money. That's how we're keeping the lights on. That's the current focus of our business. So the courses we teach computer programming for 8 and 12-year-olds as well as adult courses. We teach 3D printing and computer-aided design. We have a drone programming course. Does anyone's kids play Minecraft? So Minecraft was a huge skill that students have, and part of our teaching philosophy is to use the innate capabilities of humans, whether it's tactile feedback or spatial reasoning. Most schools just use the visual and the symbolic. So we have all these students with innate capability of Minecraft, so why not utilize that? So we're teaching kids structural engineering and circuits in Minecraft. And then we have a Python programming course for adults. This is our current location on Midwestern Parkway, right by Pelicans, and we have classes from usually about 12 to 14 students can fit in this space. Here we're teaching 3D printing. This is our first graduating class. Our classes meet once a week, and it takes a month. This is the first class for the Introduction to Computer Programming. And because we teach these as tools, geometry is not there to be learned, it's there to be used. And so everything is about function. Why are we actually learning it? It's immediately relevant to the kids, and so the impact is really huge. And both the students and the parents are really raving about it. This was cool. Joda programmed his own video game yesterday at home. We don't assign homework, but they do homework, which is really cool. This was a cool comment I saw. That last line, it teaches them to think differently about learning, that it can be fun. There's nothing better to read things like that for me. Okay, so where are we headed? Functionally, we're headed downtown. So we needed more space. So we got a new space in Big Blue on the second floor, about 3 times the size. And it's just this incredible, we did a ton of renovations, and it's this incredible education lab. We think where you work and where you learn, that line will start to blur. So it's a productivity space. There's 3D printers, there's circuit printers, there's whiteboards, there's VR, but we also can learn there. And this kind of gets to where we really are excited, and we think our business can scale into a massive unicorn, something that employs hundreds of people and has a huge impact, is actually developing our curriculum. And this came out of the functional need of, hey, I'm in the classroom with these students, we need to develop our own curriculum. Because if you've ever taught a class, you realize how draining it is. And so I wanted to design a curriculum that I walk in the room, I teach, I walk out, and I have more energy whenever I walked in. I've never had that experience until this past month when we taught our programming course. We had the infrastructure, the curriculum, the structural design of the space to where I actually left feeling more energized when I walked in. So that curriculum is super important, and we're kind of thinking of ourselves as the Pixar of education. Compare Star Wars, the movie, versus Star Wars performed by the local theater. We think that quality of content is what students need. To shift the classroom from this single teacher up front to more dynamic. I'm running a little low on time, also developing the software platform to push that out to students across the planet. This is kind of functionally what it looks like. So we're teaching computer-aided design. This would be an intro to computer programming. If you're interested in kind of where this is headed, check out this link. We lay it all out, the 1, 2, 5, 10-year plan. We've actually partnered with a company in China. We're going to be sending teachers that are trained here in Wichita Falls, and they're actually going to be teaching a summer program. We're providing the curriculum, and we're also going to partner with the same company to provide a 15-week curriculum for computer programming and computer-aided design. So how you guys can help? Spread the word, so just talk about us. Come to our space. We want people coming to use our 3D printers, use our expertise, use our space. Learn more. Like the fact, if I told any of you that you could work out for 4 weeks, or for 4 years, eat healthy for 4 years, and then that's it for the rest of your life, you'll be healthy, you'd laugh at me. It doesn't work that way. Same way with your mind. So this notion that you put on a goofy outfit, the music plays, and you're done learning, that's not how it should be. We should be lifelong learners. So we know we have courses for adults. So I encourage you guys to shift the focus, because if your child sees that you're growing, you're learning, we're apes, we imitate. So that'll feed off to your children. So be a creator, be a maker. And we have a coupon code for Meal and Cups, 10% off. So if you want to sign up for our adult courses, they start in May, you can use that coupon code. So thank you guys so much.
So I'll kick it off with the question, which you've already answered to a degree, but to ask, how can the community help you? That's the million cups question. So how can the community help you?
Come visit our space. So we're moving into this new space downtown, and I just want you guys to come visit and physically see what we're doing, because I think it will just really expand your expectations for this city. And that will lead over to what you expect out of the school district, what you expect out of your office. So just come visit our space and let's talk. And then maybe on the other hand, of course, come to our courses, sign up your kids, but I think that's the key thing. Just come check us out. Yes, sir?
I was talking to Sean the other day. Can you say more about the potential of a makerspace?
Yes, so we've been working a lot with the Chamber of Commerce. They're going to be rolling out an economic development plan, and one of the key pillars of that is a makerspace. Are you guys familiar with the makerspace? It's essentially a space where the means of productions are accessible to the masses, to the average person. And so you'll have CNC machines or laser cutters or routers or 3D printers. And so you can come, you can pay a membership fee, and you can learn how to use these tools, and then you can use these tools. I think people talk about the basic income coming from government. I don't think that's the case. I think the basic income will come from each individual. So a good example, we've had a lot of people come to our current office, and they'll come up with just these off-the-wall product ideas that they've thought of because of their unique point of view. A good example, we had the Girl Scouts come in for a 3D printing class, and at the end of the class, one of the mothers got her purse out, and she held up this tiny high heel. And she said, "Can you guys 3D print this for me?" And I said, "Of course we can 3D print those." And her eyes just lit up. She has a small business where she designs and builds these tiny little high heels for this custom doll market and sells them on the internet. And so the fact that, that's not on my radar screen. That's not something that I'm thinking of as a 20-something mechanical engineer. But she has, and she could build a nice sustainable business making $75,000 a year if only she had access to these tools. And so the makerspace is a key aspect of getting the community to be more entrepreneurial, to be creators, to kind of thinking towards that. These are digital tools, digits, fingers. These are not just tools of consumption, they're tools of creation. And so if we can shift people towards building, creating, making, I think that's a great thing, and that's where the makerspace comes in. Because it's so easy to complain and make mouth noises. Do something about it. Make something. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, if someone will tell you about complaining, and the question you should always ask is, and? And then what are you going to do? So yeah, the makerspace is a really key thing.
What do you all target for the membership?
So we'll have to play with that. One thing is that's not where we're making our money, and so we're going to try to make those costs as low as possible. So the woman with the shoe, she asked how much it would cost to do that, and I'd say just pure material costs, because if they're using our equipment, at some point maybe she wants to take our 3D printing class. So yeah, it's a perfect thing. Another cool example of a product was Crystal from Melons and Cuties. She came in, she owns this breastfeeding supply store, and she had an idea for a clip that you put onto your gown when you're in the hospital, and it does cord management so you can breastfeed while you're in the hospital. Again, something that I never would have thought of. And it's an important point because I think all of us should be in the conversation of building new technology. We live in a technological society. There's only technological solutions. And so I want the 45-year-old single mom to have input into this conversation and to develop some of these technologies. The future shouldn't just be built by the 25-year-old engineer from Silicon Valley. It should also be built by the 45-year-old single mom living in Wichita Falls. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering about curriculum. Do you know what direction you're going to head with it? Are you going to do more video game classes, things like that? Are you going to do, you mentioned coding different things. Are you going to do a class for app coding? A ton of people would really enjoy something like that. Yeah,
and that's a good thing you mentioned. In most major cities, there's coding boot camps for adults. So App Academy or Ironworks in Dallas, and it'll be a program you can, for $34,000, you come in, and in 6 months they'll train you to become an app developer. Another cool model that they're playing with is they'll do free tuition, but they'll just charge 7% of your first year's salary because the placement rate is so high. So we're definitely thinking about tangible skills that can immediately make you employable. We think that the portfolio will replace the college degree. We think that we can crank out geniuses and they leave our program so experienced and with such a good body of work, companies are trying to hire them. So a good example for the kids, we're also doing a cybersecurity course called Cyber Patriots here in the future. But a lot of it's premised upon this idea, how do we prepare kids for the year 2050? Whenever AI and automation and robotics are the core of our society, how do we do that? Has anyone seen the movie Arrival? So it's this great movie where this big spaceship lands, and the whole core of the movie is how do we communicate with these aliens? And in doing so, the linguist that communicates with these aliens and learns their language, it fundamentally shifts how she views reality, and it changes her in learning this new language. And newsflash, the aliens have landed. And so we need to learn the language, and in doing so, it changes how we view things. When you learn computer programming, you start seeing things as processes and systems. You stop seeing things as objects. I don't see you as a human. I see you as a complex arrangement of 7 times 10 to the 27 atoms in constant flux with your environment. If I remove the air from this room, you'll be dead. And so in a very realistic sense, you and the air in this room are part of the same kind of dynamic system. And so when you start seeing things at dynamic systems and these systems thinking, it's really, really powerful. And so like, I think you either programmed or be programmed. You have to have digital literacy. You have to know how to computer program. And you can use it to explore all of these other topics. So we're doing a course in computational art. So it's an art course, but they're creating art with programming. Yeah, I think the computer programming is kind of the pillar which we can explore all other subjects in much, much more depth. Because you can create simulations, you can create things that you can share. Yeah.
I'm going to have a two-part question.
Yeah.
The first is, how are you going to handle customer service issues? And the reason I ask that is because teaching children is a very particular thing. And complaints can come up very easily. What procedures do you have in place to protect the youngest of your classes?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, well, so are you talking about customer service or protecting the children? Because there's regulation we have to follow about employee background checks, saying we're not a licensed child care facility. We really try to develop systems to where bad things can happen, so as far as like security systems and imagery of the entire space. So that's one thing. But then, we've already had to deal with customer service issues. Things like, and this goes back to the dirt, a woman signed up for a course for 2 kids, and just the day before had to cancel. And so she asked, is it too late for me to get a refund? And so we think about this in 2 kind of key ways: transparency and long-term thinking. Like, we're in it for the long-term. This is a long-term play for us. This is going to be something we're doing for decades. And so that allows us the flexibility to do the right thing. So it's, of course we can give you a refund. And then if there's something more specific about they had a bad interaction in the classroom, like transparency, I think solves a lot of that. So be very upfront and transparent with what happened, and then like try to articulate how we can remedy the issue and actually implement it and put in systems in place where that can't happen again. But it goes back to the systems that you put in place. And so if one of our systems is improperly designed, we will actively seek out the critical feedback that will point out that flaw and then implement a better system.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about your branding briefly? Who, what, when, where is Dexter?
So there's a few reasons. I really love the show. I love the show Dexter Laboratory. So it was this boy genius, but he had this incredible lab. And so if he didn't have that incredible lab, he would kind of just be a crazy little kid. And so, with the MOOCs, the massive online courses, they have this great curriculum, but you also need this physical learning space. When I spent time at Stanford, I realized, Stanford because of the physical space that you embody. So there's this big emphasis on the learning lab, the space that you're actually in. And then, kind of long term, Mattel had a product called Aristotle, and I thought it was like their Xerox PARC moment. Where they developed this awesome technology, but the management didn't have the long-term vision. So Aristotle was a device like Alexa, and it was for kids, and it was your personal learning tutor, and it utilized artificial intelligence. But they had some privacy concerns, so they scrapped it. And so we're kind of thinking the same terms about Dexter. At some point, like, teachers don't scale that well. So we want to develop some AI that guides individuals through their own learning path, much like a video game. Almost like that annoying little Microsoft paperclip, if you guys remember.
Clip it.
Hey, I'm Dex! Yeah. And so that's the other thing. And then there's a Philip K. Dick novel where he talked about this system called Dext, which was the school of the future. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
So complete these blanks for me. I help blank, do blank. They choose me because, unlike anyone else, blank.
Yeah, so we help K through 12 and adults reach their full potential by preparing them with real skills, functional skills that they can leave the school environment with, that can actually solve real problems. And that's really important because I read a book recently, and they asked employers, what are the key skills that you need out of your employees whenever you hire them? They said 3 things. Problem-solving skills, which we don't have problem-solving skills. It's like if you ask a student, what's the height? Imagine you're in an interview and you ask the potential candidate, how tall is that clock tower out there? And maybe one of them had memorized it because they learned to do that in class to take tests. And they 343 feet. He said, okay. Then you gave them another building, and they didn't memorize that, and so they couldn't actually give you an answer to that. But what about if one of the students said, I don't really know but I can use the trigonometry that I learned in class, and based off of the angle of incidence, and I'm going to walk this off, I can figure that out for you. So that's problem solving. That's super, super huge. The other aspect they asked for was problem solving, practical skills, hands-on skills, actually doing real things. And then finally, digital literacy. And so those three things are really missing in the education experience. And so that's why students are coming to us and parents are coming to us, because they really feel like their school system's dropping the ball. And this goes from K through 12, college as well. You know, we really think, especially with the student debt bubble, $1.4 trillion, it's skyrocketed almost like healthcare costs. Kids are coming out of class not prepared. You know, I met my bartender at Half Pint recently, has a mechanical engineering degree from Midwestern. That's not what he paid for. That's not what he signed up for. And so these students, because we're smart, rational agents, and we just try to game the system to the best of our ability, you're taking tests, you're cramming, you're cheating, you're not actually learning things, you're not actually building things. And so you might be an engineer on paper, but you're not actually an engineer. And so that's why there's this huge push towards programs like us. Oh, you, and then you, yeah.
All right. So you said that you're looking at growing and expanding and things like that, correct?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Yes. Okay, so what kind of infrastructure do you have right now as you grow and expand? Because your specialty is in Dexter laboratories, learning, doing things with kids, curriculum, things like that. So what kind of infrastructure do you have for like your business aspect of things, assessing and then planning and implementing and then evaluating yourselves and so on and so forth? Like how do you view that?
Yeah, do you mean like practically like Basecamp and like our software infrastructure, or do you mean more kind of broader strokes about the space we're building out in downtown? Yeah, so maybe be a little more precise.
Like a core group of who, so you're going to have a curriculum, people who teach, things like that, but then you're going to have more of like the dynamics of whether that curriculum is actually working and being able to troubleshoot and different things like that. So have you thought about that?
Yeah, so I worked for the company I worked for. They do summer camps, like STEAM summer camps, and they had a really like interesting functionality for that. So they had the curriculum and then teacher feedback based off of, you know, did that lesson plan work. So it'd be like a short, like a low-hanging fruit. But also, you know, I was at a WFISD education summit, and the question was, how do we measure the effectiveness of our schooling? And a lot of people just thought, like, let's just do surveys. But does Facebook survey you? Everything's digital. Like once you enter that digital environment, everything is being tracked. And so, like, Khan Academy is a good example. There's a platform for teachers, and they can use Khan Academy, and so they see a God's eye view of the classroom, and if it took Sally 6 minutes to solve this problem and Jimmy 3 minutes to solve that problem, it'll red flag Sally. So I think, you know, and how granular can we go? If there's cameras on all of these computers, can it measure how my pupil dilates? And based off of that, it can change its inflection in the voice. So I think, like, as far as like effectiveness and actually working, you just use feedback loops like video games. Like when I was in Austin, our big thing with that software was gamification, using game mechanics to essentially get people to do certain things. We've solved these problems. You don't have to convince your kid to play video games because there's these really tight feedback loops, and that kind of enables them to reach for these really long stretch intrinsic things. So we're implementing game mechanics. Like, you know, there's for the kids, there's 5 courses, core courses, so they get a badge, and after they complete the course, they get their badge. You know, so it's a really effective mechanic. Point mechanics as well. So yeah, we're definitely on that. 2 minutes, yes. Is it you and then you? Yeah.
So earlier you read on there how one of the mothers said that for her child, learning was actually fun. So my question to you is this: when you want your child to take programming or something like that, it could be overwhelming, the thought of learning, all that. How do you, number one, make the learning experience where you draw them in, intriguing, and then also make it fun and more simplified versus how you do it in another platform?
Well, so I'm a physicist by training, and one of my favorite physicists is Richard Feynman. And he said, you only really understand something if you can explain it to a 5-year-old. And so a lot of people, if they're not a practitioner, they don't really understand something, they'll hide behind like really fancy language. Artificial intelligence, and they'll wave their hands. But then like they can't actually drill down like to functionally what it is using simple language that anyone can understand. And so our 8 and 12-year-olds actually implemented their own AI algorithm. Because if I say that to you guys, AI, what's that mean to you? But you don't really know what it, but what's that? So then you have this higher level abstraction, but what's the word branch under that? So can you break it down to simple language? And so in our courses, because we're teaching 8 and 12-year-olds, we have to use very simple language. But that requires like a deep understanding. That's why our curriculum business is so interesting, because it's really, really hard to develop curriculum that's based in simple language. And then how do you make it fun? How do you make it engaging? You utilize the full range of human capabilities. If I had a dog in the corner sitting in a cage for the whole week, and you came back next month and it was still there, we'd all recognize that was inhumane, because the dog does not get to experience its full range of dogginess. It doesn't get to run and wag its tail. And in the same way, our education environments, our work environments are inhumane, because we're just sitting there. We only use our visual and symbolic. We're not using our spatial reasoning. For instance, how did you catch that? You have this ability for spatial reasoning. You're kinesthetically involved. You have tactile feedback. So you have this full range of innate capabilities you've evolved over millions of years. Can you utilize that and bring that into the Fae? But right now, we have a very narrow definition of what it means to be intelligent. Symbolic and visual. But what about kinesthetics? If you move really well, can you somehow connect that with computer programming? Yes, you can. And those are the things that we're exploring.